Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reasonably Effective podcast, brought to you as always by myself and 10 Types.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Also, my allergies are not great, so hopefully my voice is fine.
Yeah, you sound a little creaky, and hopefully mine's okay too. My voice, that is. Yeah, but we'll be brilliant as always, so don't worry about that there. So we're talking trainer trials, I think, right? We're now, it first came out with Journey Together. We'll talk about those. There are 5 trainer trials there, and now with Destined Rivals, they've given us, I think, 6 trainer trials. They dropped one, kept 4, and added 2 new ones. So do you want to just kind of go through them in order that they've kind of come out to start with? Is that the best plan?
Yeah, that's probably fine. And you want to start with Singleton?
Yeah. So the first. Oh, by the way, for the what Journey Together set, that was for 9 weeks, and so the newest expansion, Destined Rivals, is 7 weeks. So that impacts the schedule as well. So for Journey Together, they were mostly 2 weeks, except for the last one was only 1 week. So Singleton Showdown was the first one, which is with standard card pool, standard cards, and only one copy of each card, except for basic energy. So there's a lot of singleton formats in here, which is good. I think I like it. I think you do too. I'm sure you'll be talking about that. You share your thoughts on that too. But you always get unlimited basic energy. I don't think there's a format that limits the number of basic energy cards you're allowed in it. GLC has its own thing, but still, for the basic energy you can play, it's always unlimited. So I don't think we need to keep repeating that. So standard card pool, which a number of them are, which means we have a familiarity going in with it. Right, we just know what the cards are. What happens is with like a singleton format, the like say staple cards you have gets expanded. You use all the staple cards for the most part, but then you need kind of the B tier cards see a lot of play as well, because you only have one copy. So you start to play like some weaker supporters and stuff because it's better than better than having like only 4 supporters in your deck.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Honestly, I wasn't like I thought I was gonna think it was like solid, but I didn't end up liking it that much because the decks ended up being pretty inconsistent. I didn't play it that much. Probably one of the train trials I played the least of the what 6 we've had so far, but it
Yeah.
is still kind of fun, a little bit different from standard. It feels decently similar to standard. Also, I will point out something. You mentioned this to me before we started recording and said this was an issue, and that some of the formats you cannot. Well, so there's 3 formats in live. If you're not familiar, there's standard, there's expanded, and there is the trainer trials format for deck building specifically. So if you want to build a deck, you need to build it in one of those formats. The trainers trials format is the current trainers trials format. So if you want to build a deck for a format that isn't a current trainer trials format, like one of the other ones, like the one, like say the next one coming up, then you need to build that in one of the 3 formats that's already there, which you can't always do with Singleton Showdown. You can do that. It doesn't enforce the rules, so you could accidentally mess up. And I think I might have done that and accidentally had 2 of a card, but it is something that could be an issue. We're not really going to talk about it too much, I don't think. We'll see, but it is something that not an issue here really, but definitely an issue for some other ones, notably GLC, which isn't really part of any of the formats.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to talk maybe at the end improvements that we think they could make to things. And that would go under that, being able to build decks in advance and stuff. Because especially, well, there's 2 things, and I like the fact that when they're 2 weeks, I think that's better. We talked about it a little bit offline before this. You'll certainly share your thoughts as well. But like for a format that you're not used to, and for most of these formats, GLC has been played. All the other formats are new, so you're putting together a new deck. For me, it takes a couple days to build a deck. I don't know. Some people are quicker at it. Some people, I'm sure, are slower at building decks. And you want to build a deck, play a deck, maybe revise it, and then maybe do another deck. And within a week, 7-day period, 2 decks is probably the most I can do, assuming I want to keep playing that format. So I like the 2 weeks, which was how the first set of trainer trials was for the most part, 2 weeks. I like that feel to it, so I could work with it. So, obviously, if you don't like it, you'd rather it only be 1 week. But of course, we don't want to have a lot of trainer trial formats that we don't like, anyways. The goal shouldn't be to plan for formats we don't like, right? The goal should be to have formats we like and enjoy them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think right now they're still in the trial period of it, I guess,
Yeah.
trying to figure things out here with what formats people like and things like that. So I would actually rather than see them do those shorter, like 1 week blocks to kind of see how
Hmm.
people like it, so that they could try more different things, and then they can kind of come back to them and do different things. And then once they're more figured out, they'll decide what they want to do in the future, potentially keep a format permanently or a couple of formats permanently, or of course have the rotation of a certain number of formats where essentially they're all going to be the same. Like you have 4 formats in the rotation plus like a fifth one that might change out,
Yeah.
and then that could be cool once they find out the formats that people like, and yeah, I think that's what they should do. I don't know if they're doing that. It kind of seems like they are. They're kind of messing around with the formats because they are changing some of them, not changing all of them for the next this next set. I think honestly it would have been, as I said, like just 1 week per thing would be better first, and then 2 weeks second, which isn't the case that they can do because of the amount of time that they're given between
Yeah.
the sets. But I think it's okay. I don't really have a big complaint with it. I will say that I got kind of bored of Singleton Showdown and Twin Battle pretty quickly, and they were there for 2 weeks, and I personally felt like they overstayed their welcome just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Singleton Showdown, I agree. It's a little boring in Twin Battles as well. We'll get to that a little bit more shortly. Yeah, it's boring in that it's less interesting because there's standard cards and you can play all the EXs and A specs and all that in it that you're used to seeing. So it seems more a lot like standard, and we're looking for something different. That's the appeal of it. For the obviously a lot of people just want to play standard, and that's fine too. This is people that want to do something besides that. And the one thing is the games are slower, the game decks are less consistent, especially like single format. You like your trainers and stuff. You just like Pokemon search cards and such. Things get just a lot less consistent. My one comment is would be from it was a long time ago now. We were playing Single Showdown, but people would concede a lot after turn 1 or 2 when they didn't set up. But most of the time, I hadn't set up either. Right, most games neither player sets up for a few turns, and you kind of takes a while to get going. So you just need patience. With certainly, I would recommend more patience than standard format because you're not doing well. But unless your opponent's board state is actually set up, they're probably looking at a hand also and saying, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, but also in those situations, then like eventually someone will get set up. If you don't get
Yeah.
set up, you're realistically not going to be able to win. Um, and so you kind of need to, one player will get set up and just kind of win. In my experience, a bunch of the time, sometimes they only have one threatening Pokemon. And if you deal with that Pokemon, you can win. That's a different dynamic that you don't see really in any other format that I played. Um, to the extent that I saw it in Singleton Showdown, in my games that I played, again, I didn't play a ton of it, but I played some of it, and that was kind of cool, but it didn't happen all the time. Sometimes some player would just like roll over the other player, or sometimes both players would completely whiff, but like they're not really damaging each other. So it's not like someone's going to win within that like 5 turn period at the beginning of the game where nothing's really happening. And then some player just draws out of it and then just kind of wins. So I found it like kind of cool, but and I've heard people say like I've heard mixed reviews in this format. I think probably based on what I've heard, people have said it's like the second worst. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
it's okay. It's not like a bad format, and they are bringing this one back, which we'll talk about. And I think it's fine to bring it back. Um,
Yeah, look, I
yeah,
think a positive for it is it's standard card set. It's easy for new people to do it because you and I have done some deck building. A lot of players don't really build decks, so you've got to start utilizing that skill set. So if you're not used to deck building, and if you haven't played that long, you don't know the older cards. You don't even know the full set of cards in standard format because they most of the cards don't see play. So I like to be thrown into some really weird format and expanded. I think is overwhelming. So I think keeping it's a simple one. I think it's good for newer people, and they still need that with it. It is a bit random, right? The TCG is always a bit random. At times, I feel like the Pokemon TCG is a little too random. I kind of struggle with that. I get it. It is what it is. You have to accept it. But the randomness then gets amplified in something like Singleton Showdown, right? What does one player set up or not? You'll get that imbalance a little more often, I think, in a format like this. But it's fine. I'll jump into Twin Battles. You can obviously comment more on Singleton too if you want. But Twin Battles is very similar. We had that for the next 2 weeks. That's even more like standard format. You play two copies of every card, except for basic energies, which are unlimited again, which does mean no A specs. So that's one thing that's a little different from standard format, no A specs. But honestly, the decks were even more like standard decks. There's a lot of standard decks that need very little, like top tier standard decks that needed very little modifying to be a Twin Battles deck. Like you could play your Dragapult, which has the little engine, and with Charizard, and you could even put in like Pidgeotto, like two line of those. You have two rare candies, like four, but that's okay. You get two Arvins, and you have like not a bad deck even for standard format in a lot of cases, which makes it, I think, the least interesting of them, these formats from my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I will also say this is regarding, I guess, all the formats, but what you said before about newer players with deck building, I actually think newer players do, like true new players, end up deck building a bunch. Like, when you first, I guess it's not, I'll talk about this a little bit, but when new players join the TCG, generally they just start like throwing together decks that honestly aren't very good, but they throw stuff together and they get some experience deck building immediately, because they aren't familiar with the resources where you can get decks from. They don't necessarily deck build super well, but they deck build, so they have some experience with that. So I feel like it's actually players who are. I mean, if you're a newer player, you don't know all the cards though, so you'll struggle to build something um, good because you're not an experienced deck builder. And then if you are a more experienced player, then you get to that point where you're not deck building as much and just more so maybe net decking or tweaking decks. Sometimes you will deck build, but not like all that often. And of course, and then as you said, you won't be playing with the like more niche cards. Like you won't be playing with a lot of the cards. So um, and I'll say the worst situation to be in for deck building, and I know like a couple of people who are in the situation where they were immediately gotten into the game as like a pretty serious, not necessarily like competitive, but like pretty serious level of play, and so completely like missed the beginning steps of that, and then are really familiar with some of the more complex stuff in the TCG, but then are missing some like the fundamentals, which is kind of interesting. It's not that common, but it's kind of interesting to see. And regardless, I feel like newer players do end up deck building, because if you played honestly a lot. So the trainer trials, they don't have a ranked matchmaking. I personally don't really care about that theoretically, but I think it is important that there is some elo system or something kind of like an elo system, some matchmaking system that's based on some rank that's like a hidden rank, as opposed to a public rank where you're just kind of grinding for your rank. So in order to pair better players against better players and worse players against worse players, to have a more fair experience just in general. And I've not found that in trainer trials. And maybe um, it's just hard to find matches or something, but it kind of feels like I'm just getting paired against people who are relatively new to the game, without that much experience. And it's like, I think it's gotten a little better, but I can't really tell. But regardless, I think that that is another thing I wanted to comment on, where a lot of the decks I've been playing against, at least in some of the formats, are just pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point on how do you find opponents and how does it happen, which in casual, and this is in casual, so we could always do standard and expanded and casual. Expanded could only be in casual. The matchups are much more random. The decks you run into are much more random, and this kind of has that feel to it as well. It depends on the day, I would say too. There's some days I just get people with decks that don't make sense, and we may have a few stories to share there. I don't know, like where people had we've both seen people. Well, you particularly, I think someone had like an EX counter deck, right? Like in
Yeah, in I don't know, one of the non-EX formats they had. I think it was Aceless. No, what? That's not the name of it. CU Cup.
okay,
No, maybe it was Silver Sea. I think it was Silver Sea. So you can't play. I don't know. It was one where you couldn't play like Ace Specs, and you also couldn't play Pokemon EX, and they had Mimikyu to counter EXs and Genesect to counter Ace Specs. Theoretically, these cards can be attacking Pokemon, and they're not like terrible. I guess I don't know, but they're not that good. Yeah, I think this was the CU Cup, and then and you had a game. I was watching you, and you had your opponent was playing like a bunch of stage 2 lines, but like you can't actually
yeah,
play any of the stage 2s, so they're just playing a bunch of like unevolved Pokemon, and then just like lost. And when I say a bunch, there was like 6 or 7 or 8 of them.
Y-
So it was kind of weird.
Yeah, that we'll get to that. I think probably CU Cup where you can't play the rare cards, and all the stage twos that evolve from their basic to stage ones were the rare cards. So it made a very weird deck. And the other day, I think in the current one, my opponent mulliganed 10 times the darkness energy, all just darkness. And then and then they only played one Pokemon that was a grass Pokemon that had to have grass energy. That I just didn't get what was happening, obviously.
Yeah, I was saying there might have been a challenge to play like a bunch of darkness energy in a deck. I don't remember what the challenges are, but that could have been the case, where they just had a bunch of darkness energy and it was like a deck that wasn't a darkness deck just to like. Did they just like concede?
No,
Or
I
they just
had
like
to.
pass a bunch? Or would
Yeah,
just
they
like
didn't do anything. I don't remember if I won, if they went first, and I won second on my first turn or whatever. But I think I knocked them out for game. So, wasn't sure what's happening. So you get some weird player games. You even in regular like standard, right? In ranked even, you get things a little weird, but it gets weirder here. So anyway, for commenting on Twin Battles, which is standard pool, card pool, 2 copies of each card. Again, probably the dullest of the formats. They are repeating it again, but there's a reason why they're repeating it too. So it's actually going to get a little bit of hype this second time it comes out. But we will talk about that shortly. The next one was supposed
all
to
right.
be.
I have
Oh, go ahead.
one other thing to say about Twin Battles and Singleton. As I said, I think Singleton's more unique than Twin Battles. But Standard is a good format. Twin Battles plays closer to Standard, so I personally enjoyed the games in Twin Battles a little more than the Singleton Showdown. But ultimately, that's because it's better. It's close to Standard, which is really the Pokemon TCG format that essentially everyone plays. And so that's what all the cards are designed for. So Singleton becomes a little clunky in certain ways. But I don't necessarily think it's a better format because if you want to play Standard, just play Standard. But yeah, I did want to point that out that I personally did enjoy it a little bit more than Singleton Showdown.
You like Twin because it worked better. I also just say I think they should have done Twin Battles first the first time they did this rather than Singleton because it was for people that aren't used to alternate formats and deck building. Twin Battles is what they're very close to standard format, so it's easier for new people in alternate formats to make their first deck for. I think it's just a better transition. Twin Battles, then Singleton after because people have already started. It's like a process leading there. All right, so now the third one was the third trainer trial was supposed to be GLC, but if you recall,
Oh,
live kind of blew up. So we will do it the order they actually occurred in, which becomes the Silver Series, which is all right. So the card pool is only cards from Scarlet and Violet series, which is a little odd because the other ones say standard format, which Scarlet and Violet is standard format now. Maybe down the road when there's other, maybe that'll become meaningful down the road. And it was uncommon, common, and rares only, and no rule box Pokemon, so no EXs. So, so a single prize format, right, with unlimited copies of cards. And I think you could play A-Specs in that. I'm trying to remember now about that.
yeah, I'm not sure. It's kind of weird. I think you could. I don't know if you're supposed to. I will say this format is because you said. I think you said. I don't know if you said this today, but you said this format that was established is GLC, but Silver Series and CU Cup are also two formats that are played. Some specifically Silver Series is sometimes goes by another name. It doesn't really go by Silver Series. It goes actually by a bunch of different names, but the main one is actually Aceless, which we'll talk about, which is kind of weird. But yeah, it sometimes goes by the name Aceless. There's another format called Aceless. So it's kind of complicated. But that's what I've seen or what I've heard. I've seen it on like the Justin Basil website. There's a bunch of alternate formats, and I've seen it some other places as well. And sometimes it's just like single prize standard essentially as well.
Right.
That's something that some people will say maybe. And so it is a format that is played some, not that much, but obviously there are people who are just playing it more casually, and notably physically, where they can't necessarily acquire the EX cards. And well, just have obviously a lot more uncommon, common, and rare cards than the cards of higher rarity. So then at that point, this is essentially the format that they'd be playing in.
Yeah, and that's true. You can play it with basically single prize Pokemon only gets played. So, so it is basically that. Now, I think in terms of decks, that there was for Singleton and Twin, there was a variety of decks, I would say. Although for Twin, honestly, Dragapult Charizard, I saw that a lot, and I think that's what I mostly played because it's a real obvious combo that was pretty good. But Silver Series had some concentration for top decks, I think. So the deck I built that I played the most was Ancient Box because Ancient Box has been a good single prize attacker. It's a basic, which is nice. It's got good supporters that work with it. You can power it up in one turn. You can one shot and anything in the format. Now, one of the comments I will make in for standard format for something like Ancient Box or like my old friend Rapid Strike Malamar, what makes those single prize decks good is the single prize Pokemon can get to the damage to one shot rule box Pokemon. You don't need to get scale to that degree, but it's still nice to be able to scale up to 200 though. So, you want to be able to one shot things which Ancient Box could. You attach the tool to it. You're now at 200 HP, so you're not getting one shot a lot. So it was a good deck. Probably the second best deck. I think you played the best deck. And I think you're going to make a case that that was the better deck, which is probably right. And it seemed like there are a couple decks that were a bit unfair to the rest of the format, which will be a challenge going forward, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that deck is, and this is a deck that's had a lot of talk about it, which is Festival Lead. Festival Lead, of course, has the, if you're not familiar, it's an ability on a couple of Pokemon that allows you to attack twice. If you have the Stadium Festival Grounds in play, Festival Grounds doesn't really do very much, but you have it in place, so you can attack twice. And then the main attacker is the Diplin from Twilight Masquerade, I think. And oh no, wait, yeah, Twilight Masquerade. I saw it was Prismatic Evolutions, but it attacks twice and it does 20 future bench Pokemon for one grass on stage one. So presumably you have that you have a full bench, so you're hitting 100, and then you attack twice, so that's 200. There are ways to buff it as well. Though there are less in this format than in standard. In standard, you do have access to like the extra damage to EXs, which obviously, I mean, you have access to here, but obviously not very good.
Right.
But yeah, Diplin is strong. It's actually, I'd compare it very similarly to Dragapult EX in standard. Dragapult EX is a deck that is it's strong. It's just like really solid damage to your opponent's active, which this is. It actually does the same amount of active damage, essentially, but it can also target multiple Pokemon at the same time. If you take a knockout with the first Diplin, then you're hitting a second Pokemon, potentially taking two prizes in one turn in a format where really no other deck's doing that, which is kind of insane. And at minimum, you're taking one prize every turn. Also, engines are a little sketchier in this format, or in a lot of the other formats. That are in the trainer trials, but this deck can use the Thwacky engine, which is really good. I think it's actually, I don't know if it's good in standard. I haven't really messed with it. It's kind of clunky, but in this deck, I mean, it's really the only option. It's really good, and it's like essentially a stronger Pidgeot EX. So it's really really strong, and there isn't really any stopping it once it's going, and it's again not that hard to set up. So this deck is super strong. And also, you said Ancient Box is good. Ancient Box is the deck I've seen played. I also played Tyranitar, which I thought was really good. It's like a really disruptive deck that's pretty strong as well, and they're both weak to grass. So that's wait, I'm pretty sure Tyranitar is weak to grass. Yeah, it is. So that's like not ideal for them because then they lose to this deck. Like the Festival League deck was definitely the most played deck from what I've seen. And also, I'm gonna jump to the CU Cup expanded. I've had multiple people complain about Festival League. Not gonna lie, I've seen it some in the CU Cup expanded when I was doing that, but I didn't see it like all the time. And people were saying, like someone said they saw it like 10 times in a row, which seems like kind of crazy. Because I was seeing bad decks. I'm not gonna lie, most of the decks I saw were not very good. Specifically in that format, I think. But regardless, Festival Lead is really, really strong in these formats. Again, it's kind of like the Dragapult EX of these formats, but better. Like Dragapult EX is good in standard, very strong, very annoying to have to deal with. But there are other good decks. I don't actually know if Diplin is better than Dragapult is in standard. Diplin in these other formats better than Dragapult in standard, but it kind of feels like it is. And it's really annoying. It's not like everyone was playing it in my experience, and it's not like it's not beatable. There are ways to beat it through the use actually of resistance. That's a big part of a way to beat it. Because damage, if you buff damage, it's doubled up, but also if you reduce damage, it's also doubled up. So that can be a really meaningful thing there, in my opinion. Regardless, I'm not really here to talk just about the metagame, but Diplin still is a card that is really, really strong to the point where I've heard multiple people complain about it. I actually just looked on my Discord server before this, and someone said they built Festival Lead in the in Ace list, which actually don't know how they did. So I asked them, and they haven't responded yet. But yeah, it's definitely a really like a kind of stupidly strong Pokemon.
Yeah, yeah, that gets into an interesting comment or thought is card bans, right? Because there's tournaments that happen certainly online in IRL too. Some with like especially with singleton form tournaments, single prize tournaments. Sorry, I where you have to ban certain cards, right? There's certain cards at times that just can overpower those type of events. So, do you need certain card bans for these things? The current format, Ace List, which we'll get to, that does have some bans. But like for like the Silver Series or the CU Cup, do they need to ban a card like some of the festival lead cards? I possibly right, and it's nice not to have bans, but on the other hand, it's not good when one or two decks really dominate things. So you don't want to have to either play a certain deck or play a counter to it, right? It's not a very to me it's not such a fun environment. It's fun where we want to be creative with our deck building and let a broad range of ideas be valid.
Yeah, yeah, and I think Silver Series is like still a pretty solid format. It's nothing super crazy. This one also could have been the first format. I feel like there are definitely standard legal decks that you can play in it,
Yeah.
obviously, and then there are also decks that people like kind of know about that aren't super good in standard that you can play that are fine here. So I think this is definitely a really safe format. Again, the naming is kind of weird. Not really sure what the deal with that is. But yeah, and that one is coming back as well as the last format
Right. So you
for
said
this set.
yeah. So you said it's called Silver Series because the new cards have the silver border.
I think so. I mean, I don't know any other reason, right?
Right. I mean, Silver Series like doesn't right. It's Scarlet and Violet. It seems like that could be the name of the series, something like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if it's Silver Series because the card border, unless when assume it seems like they're going to keep silver borders long term. So I don't know what they're going to do. So unless this is supposed to be, or unless this is like a resetting of an expanded format that is going to be Scarlet and Violet onward, right? Indefinitely, which it could be, right? Within that card pool.
Yeah, then I'd expect it to say the card pool Scarlet and Violet on, like how it says for GLC, the format is black and white on, or Sun and Moon on. And obviously that means the same thing as Scarlet and Violet series right now, and also the same thing as standard. But again, it is the same thing as standard. They've gone out of their way for some reason to change it to Scarlet and Violet series. And yeah, I'm pretty sure the new cards from the Mega series, which are like not part of the Scarlet and Violet series, but are like they might kind of be adjacent to it. We're not exactly sure at this point, but presumably, I guess that won't be in it. I don't know. The Silver series is fine though. It's just kind of there's some kind of weird quirks about it though.
Yeah. Which again, do there need to be bans? And then if because some of these are going to need to probably have bans, I suspect. And then do we want the Pokemon Company International setting the bans for this? Is that the best? I don't know. That's its own issue with that. And you mentioned the CU Cup, so should we just cover that before we hit the everybody's favorite format?
Yeah, yeah. Before we hit Ageless, so no, the CU Cup expanded is first of all random thing. Not random, but I think it's kind of I think the name's kind of bad. I mean, it's not horrendous, but it's like CU Cup, which is, by the way, like Cup starts with the letter CU, so it's like kind of clunky in that way. And then also it's like has a hyphen in it or like a dash or whatever.
Yeah.
I think yeah, hyphen. And it's kind of weird. Like is expanded like a sub thing in the format. Also, this format is sometimes goes by the name Pauper. I believe Pauper is like a Magic format that then people play in the TCG some as well, the Pokemon TCG. And I've heard some people play it. I don't think it's very fun from what I've seen. I don't think it's horrible, but I
Well,
also think it's really different because, um, cards over time have gotten a little stronger, right? And notably, also cards have gotten there are more cards, right? So in the set, like Difflin's in uncommon, and it used to be, and also like the cards. Like the mediocre cards in sets have gotten better to the point where they're like pretty good, which is good, right? But
yeah.
now there are legitimately like strong decks in the format. There's like a lot of strong. Oh, so what it is? It's commons and uncommons. I
Yeah.
don't know if I said that. The
No.
CU stands for common, uncommon. And it's expanded, which is not actually. It's live expanding, which is Sun and Moon on, and also that means it has the bands of expanded. I actually don't think it should like actually have those because like, I mean maybe some of them are worth having, but I mean scooping is so fun, right?
I hey,
But anyway,
yeah, I'm a fan, and it wouldn't break this format having Scoop Up Net in it. So, it's obviously easier just to say the expanded card pool, though. So I kind of get it.
yeah. But then like something like Diplin, like Festival Lead's like super good in this format. And this is, I believe, the one where someone was like, or a bunch of people are really complaining about Festival Lead, especially because people were like kind of annoyed with it with Silver Series. And now it's like back with this U Cup expanded, and this is the only format, by the way, that is not coming back, which I don't like despise. I don't. I mean, like if they want to mix things around, I don't hate that. I personally did enjoy this format potentially the most. So I'm not, a big fan of that, but whatever, they're doing what they want to do. But it's also the only format that had only 1 week, so it's the only format. Um, well, I guess like the new formats for this upcoming set also are only having 1 week, but like they're here right now. So yeah, this one getting cut, like this seems kind of bad. Like I feel like any of the other ones would have been better to cut than that. But regardless, it's a cool format. It's one of the two where you get to play the expanded era cards, or the Sun and Moon and Black and Sword and Shield era cards. The other is GLC, and they have different feels to them. They both have interesting feels. I personally like this U Cup expanded a little more because um, there were just some like really fun combos you could do. I felt like it was a more combo-y based format versus GLC is a more um, I'll talk about it in a moment, and I think it feels more similar to Aceless as well, in my experience. I mean, because it's not singleton, right? It's not singleton, so you can build decks with really specific focuses that are really crazy. Ultimately, that could make it feel, I don't know, it feels like expanded to me. It felt like expanded in a good way, where it's kind of crazy, kind of silly. Ultimately not a format that also is probably something that people want to be playing all the time, but there are legitimately like solid, decently cool decks as well that aren't like super crazy as well.
Yeah, I mean, we will have to talk at the end what the future, what we think it could be, and with it. But look, I liked CU Cup. That was my favorite of the format, and like you said, it was only 1 week, and then it's the only of the formats that didn't get carried over to trainer trials. So, is what it is, I guess. So, although like Aceless is kind of similar-ish, I guess, in its way. Look, I like the fact that you get to play the expanded card pool, but unlike regular expanded format where you have top Pokemon and top trainers, we don't get access to the top Pokemon, but we get access to top trainers. So I think that's good. It gets interesting for something like if like the Drizzile and Teleon with the ability Shady Dealings. You could play the Drizzile, which is still good, but you can't play the Inteleons because I think I'm not sure if there's any Inteleon that you could even use in the format. So, but you still so it gives you access to part of a good engine, which is interesting, right? So you could still use it. It's certainly Drizzile is a very good engine. Search for anyone trader on play. But it's not as good. So I think it worked out. I think it's interesting. I feel like it puts to me it made an interesting set of decisions to be made. So I liked it. But yes, I do think Festival Lead was probably too strong. If they do bring back CU Cup, I think there probably does need to be some bans. And if they're going to be changing it every time a new set comes out, having a list of banned cards for some of these formats, which they can revise the next time, I don't think would be a bad thing.
Yeah, I think there's it's a cool format with some and some changes. Also, you can play like most of the trainers. There's some trainers you can't play. You can't play Boss's Orders. You can play Guzma, which is like probably a better Boss's Orders. They're a little bit different, but yeah, it's again you have as you said you have access to a lot of the good trainers. I don't remember what good ones you can't play. Marnie, I think you can't play. I don't remember though. But
Yeah,
regardless, yeah, it's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing with the trainers, because most of the professor's research are rare cards, but there's some professor's research that are not rare. So I think you can play whatever research you want. But then like Marnie or Boss, I guess, is only rare, but Guzma wasn't. So it gets a little funny with some of those cards. But it's not a bad. It's certainly not a bad format. I don't think either of us would say. and then we'll come to what I do think is everybody's favorite format, not aceless, and that's Gym Leader Challenge, right? Although it this I'll let you can run through it a little more, but this is GLC from what Sun and Moon on, where you can't play black and white or XY cards because they don't want you to play it in live. And yes, you can complain about it, and you can complain about it. I don't. That's fine. But the thing I will point in terms of their defense on this is they can barely get standard working. They can even less get the truncated expanded format working. So at this point, if they tried to do full expanded format, the games probably would just cease to work, for a long period of time.
Yeah, yeah. Ultimately, this is what they can do, and this is a big step forward. We talked about train trials a bunch on the podcast, and generally have mostly positive things to say about it. And yeah, I think this is another cool thing. People like GLC. I think it's mostly just a fan favorite. As far as a format to play, it's a cool format. There's fun things. It's a singleton format. It's a monotype format. I believe it's the only monotype format. Yeah, and then it's also a single prize, non-rule box, no A spec, etc. format. So that's something that we've seen in a bunch of these formats. But the interesting thing is also it's the only format that you can play. Well, you can play Scuba Net, right? I like that.
Yeah.
So that's cool. GLC did have it had a bunch of issues. Definitely had the most issues of all the formats because it had to be pushed back. And like the game just kind of like stopped working, and also there was a bunch of like cards that didn't work right. But clearly they're putting more effort into this. I do believe it is just because it is a popular format. But I mean, they want to do things that people like. And that's cool. Oh, and then also this one has a ban list as well. And the ban list is like the official ban list. I think the ban list being the official ban list. Well, I generally like GLC. I think some people think I don't like GLC, and I really do. But the one thing that I've probably been the most critical of is actually the ban list. That I think a lot of the bans are kind of not super super meaningful. Not that I mean, well, not necessarily not meaningful. I think they're not necessarily. I don't necessarily think they should be there. I think you and I both agree that that bans aren't something that are like I mean bans aren't good. If you could avoid bans, you shouldn't ban cards, obviously. And then neither of us really like bans that are not truly necessary for a format. But obviously people have different thoughts on that. But GLC is like really a fan format. It's like in live, it's kind of becoming. It's not live isn't obviously it's not like a fan game or anything like that. It's kind of like the opposite of that. So GLC it's definitely like an interesting spot here with that that regard. But obviously that's something that you don't really see with the other formats. I mean you kind of sort of see it with Silver Series, which is as I said, something that's called Aceless, and then this U Cup expanded, which is called Pauper, which are formats that are played some, but certainly not at the level of GLC. GLC certainly not really near the level of Standard, but it is a format that is it's like I believe the second biggest format played in the Pokemon TCG. Obviously, again, the difference between format 1 and 2 is really big. The standard really
Yeah.
is the TCG, but GLC is definitely something that a lot of people like and do play. Again, it is directly, I didn't say this, but it's directly connected to, I mean, Tricky Jim, the YouTube channel. So it's more so like a fan base of that, as opposed to like a full Pokemon TCG thing. But regardless, that's a bunch of yapping about random stuff. But the format it's pretty fun. It is the only monotype format. However, we'll talk about Aceless. I'd say Aceless kind of feels like GLC, kind of feels like CU Cup expanded. So it's a bit of a mixture between the two, in my opinion. But I mean, it works pretty well. Oh, also, not having the black and white and X and Y cards, it doesn't matter that much. There's a handful of cards you can't play that are meaningful, but I said this before in the video that a lot of the cards, like the earlier cards, the older cards, just aren't very good. The sets are smaller, and the percentage of good cards, I believe, is also less. So that's that means that you're not missing that many important cards. There's like a handful. There's like Versus Seeker, um, Hexmaniac, which I actually don't like Hexmaniac, so I'm happy that that's not there. Though it does add strategy to the game, and or no, not Rank Octillery, and a couple of other meaningful cards, but ultimately it does play pretty similarly. And it also being not the full format means that people need to reimagine the deck some, but there is a starting point for the decks, which you can kind of see in these standard based formats a little bit, but you see the most in GLC, where I think it actually has a good mixture of having a being a format that you can find stuff for, but it's not just net decking. Net decking can lead to really boring stuff where everyone's just kind of playing pretty similar things and really similar lists specifically. But having no place to start off with, especially with only 1 or 2 weeks, means that the wait, I've lost my train of thought. So having not having to net deck, not being able to net deck means you have some differences. So you just have, I think, the right mix. So and also I will say this is really important as well, that this is the only format coming back for 2 weeks. I personally would have rather seen it just 1 week. I know they're just doing it for fans, but again, the CU Cup expanded, I feel like should have been brought back, and I feel like they're not getting the full, like, essentially research value into this like trial period. Which I think is still going on to this point, with this U Cup expanded, because they just had it for a week, and it was kind of an afterthought as well, because this is like a big time in the TCG right now, with Destin Rivals, with the new set on the horizon, obviously out now, and a lot of different things going on in the TCG.
Yeah, look, in terms of GLC and deck building, well, a couple things. One, like GLC or any singleton format is better in expanded just for consistency, right? You can get more like Pokemon search cards and such. So, uh, so the decks function better if it's a singleton format like GLC compared to like the singleton form Showdown, which is only standard, and you just don't have good access to trainers. So that's a plus. I think it's because I'm someone that didn't really play GLC before this. I played it when it came out. This was the toughest one for deck building for me, for a couple of reasons. First off, I know there's a lot of people that play GLC that are good with GLC decks, so I'm at a huge disadvantage to people who've been playing GLC games, building GLC decks, how it comes. Yes, you can net deck, and hopefully I had to do that because I don't. There's certain staple cards and stuff, and I don't really know what they are. And that and if you go to certain type, there's certain Pokemon you're almost always going to have, and I don't know what those are. So it was a lot of work for me to try to put together a deck on my own, which I tried to do first, and it was well, I was going to say a bit of a disaster, but it was a disaster of a deck. So I will say, and then I did net deck, which I don't like as much. And it's still a decent amount of work though, because you have to find replacements to cards. Because all the lists you can find are in full expanded format, at least that I could find. So I think if you're not a GLC person, this is the hardest format to start building decks to. It's because it's its own. It's different, right? The Pokemon you need all within a type. You have to start thinking a little differently and getting cards that you wouldn't normally. So I just found, to me, it's a tough one to get into. It doesn't make it a bad format. It's just I think it's a tough one for non-GLC players to get into. So long term, I don't know what they're going to do with this. Are they going to? I imagine they're always going to have GLC in the rotation, I would think, or at some point, is it this just going to become like the third format permanently? We'll have to talk about that at the end, but I feel. I feel like an outsider coming to it. I think probably that's a case for a lot of people, right? Most of the people still are standard players, not GLC players. There's a lot of GLC players out there, don't get me wrong, but most people haven't been playing GLC, and I just found it tougher to build a GLC deck than any of the other formats myself.
Yeah, it is like kind of weird to jump into being kind of established. So I think it's because it's established. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know if your GLC decks are like much better or worse than like like uh like Aceless or
right. Like
Cup expanded decks,
right.
which are like also kind of harder to dive into.
That's true. I could put together right. A GLC deck might not be better than my CU Cup deck, but other people's GLC decks are better, right? Than because they know what they're doing. In a sense, nobody knew how to build a CU Cup deck, so you could put together whatever. Honestly, and I put together, like, for Aceless, we'll get to that probably next. I put together an okay deck, and honestly, I think I was better than most of the decks I was seeing. And not that my deck building was that great, but everyone else is struggling as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how much GLC I ended up playing. I didn't play it. I was gonna play it a bunch, and then ultimately I went to do a bunch of videos on it, and ultimately people just weren't really interested in the format, to the level that I was expecting. They were actually very like not interested in the format, which was kind of interesting to see. I think honestly they were like way more interested in CU Cup expanded and I don't know, maybe some other formats than GLC.
Mhm.
Not that there was no interest, but there just was like kind of limited interest. And and the decks I was playing against were like pretty solid. I don't remember if they were like insane. I think they were kind of mediocre. Oh, I think that might have been where I saw Mimikyu. That wasn't with Genesect, but I do believe I saw Mimikyu. Um, but it was kind of it's fun. It's kind of it's interesting. It's also something that again is based on a YouTuber, which is kind of meaningful as well. Theoretically, could be some implications of like future things that could happen. I don't really know. I don't know what that next format would be. Like I don't know what other formats. As we're gonna talk about the future, I don't know what other formats they'd be adding to the rotation. I can't really think of any immediately off the top of my head, other than maybe mixing and matching some of the different things here. Right? They have like different counts of cards. They have they oh I actually did remember something, but they have different like formats like standard or expanded, and they have different like rarities, and yeah, that's about it in monotype as well, just kind of mixing and matching that. But yeah, I do wonder what the future will be of the extra formats that they're going to add, because I hope they do add extra formats. Like beyond the ones they've had so far are cool, but I'd like to see them get a little more adventurous as well, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, well, do they want to keep switching it up, right? It's one of those things that if it settles in to like a rhythm of like three or four formats, it starts to get solved to some extent, and it starts to get less interesting, right? So as it kind of switches up more, this is these formats outside of GLC, which is already established, is about quick adapting, deck building on the fly to a certain extent, which is fun, right? Obviously, the more we cycle through, the less that's the case. But yeah, that's a good thing. So we had trainer trials part one, 9 weeks. We had those five formats. That now we're in the second set of cards with the new set with Destined Rivals, and the first one. Well, do we want to hit the repeats first, I guess, before we get to the new
Um,
formats?
Yeah, yeah. So we kind of talked about them some. I don't think there's really much to add, but the first one, I'm just going to read them all, including the new ones, but
Yeah.
not really say what they are. So the week one is Aceless, which was what we're in right now, and yeah, I believe what we will be in when we post this. And then week two is Twin Battle. This is the one that's thematic, right?
Yeah, Twin Battle because they're going to the second anniversary of Live. I think when Live came out of beta, I think is what it is. I assume when they're going to be giving us everyone a deck for Twin Battles, which you complained about saying why would they do that? That's the least interesting format. But then I was like, yes, but it's the second anniversary Twin. It ties in. So, but yeah, I would agree. It's not great. And honestly, I think they should probably give out a deck for each of these formats. That would be it just, especially for people that aren't so sure about deck building, it'd be nice just to give a deck, here's something you can start with, and it's not like, things are easy to get resources here, so it wouldn't be putting them out.
Yeah, no, I think I kind of see that. I do agree with the ideas you said, but I think like then you might just run to that deck like every time, so that wouldn't be as fun. But yeah, no, I kind of agree with that. And
Okay.
then the third one's Singleton Showdown coming back. We've got Half Your Havoc, a new one. These are each for a week. Then we have GLC in weeks 5 and 6. So this is the only 2 week one. Again, same stuff going on with that. And then we got Silver Series as the last one. So no CU Cup expanded, but the other four are all coming back, though again, most of them are shorter, but that's just because there is less time. And they are doing it in blocks of weeks as well. That's like definitely something that they're going to be doing,
Right.
which makes sense. It would be kind of weird to do it differently, but also then it means that there's an unevenness between amounts of times in the formats that might be like that's probably fine, but it's a little awkward.
Well, and it happening every time a set comes out, and the number of weeks between sets varies. So there's always going to be some level of variability. Although we did get 2 extra days of Singleton Showdown because I think that popped up the Tuesday they run the updates. So rather than waiting till the Thursday, I think. But anyway, that's just the quirks of live and the way things work. So anyway, we're in Aceless right now, so I'll jump into that. So it's the standard card pool, and it's a singleton format, only one copy of each card except for basic energies, and no rule box allowed, no ace specs allowed. And then there is a ban list here, which you can comment on more. Skiploom, Jumpluff, Glamora, Machamp, Luxurious Cape, Brambleghast, Pheasantipity, Dusclops, Dustsnore. Oh, one of the things I want to comment on for which is true for any of these non-rule box Pokemon, the primary engine, I think, in the standard format is like Pheasantipity, right? I would say
Yes.
Serendipity EX, correct. So
Because Serendipity is banned, which is not Serendipity
no, correct.
EX.
So what you're forced to for any of these non-rule box things, and the engines are okay, but the engine cards, we lost most of the, we lost like Bibera, we lost our best engines really. The Dunsparce I think is one of the better generic engines out there now. So getting an engine for these decks is its own challenge, which it could be interesting. It also makes the decks a little more clunky too.
Yeah. And I will also say that this format kind of feels like GLC, but it's cool because you can like, you still have like a type you're really usually focusing on. And also again, being a singleton format, you have a deck where you don't have like truly a main attacker, presumably. You have like a handful of them. And then at that point, you have like, some themes and you have some different things going on. And so far, I actually will say I've liked this format the most, I think, except for that my deck doesn't work in live because live is, but regardless, when it doesn't work in live because it's glitch, that's why it's not like that it's not good. I think it is good. But anyways, let's talk about the ban list because this is the only format with a ban list outside of GLC. These two, GLC was the only one initially. This one also has it. So you're like scrolling through them, and you just see like 3 times as much text. But regardless, the bans. So if you're not familiar with these cards, you also didn't even say the set they're from, which some of them like it does matter because people probably don't even know what these cards are.
That's true.
But I don't actually know which ones have multiple cards. I know some do. I don't know if like Jumpluff and Skiploom do. But regardless, Skiploom, Jumpluff, Glamora, Machamp, and Pheasantipity all are pretty similar. And I believe they're banned for the same reason, which is also, I will say, because there was the so it gets really complicated here because there's a format Aceless, which is like the Silver Series. That's like a format that people played some, which is just single price standard. And in that format, from what I remember, there was a Dragapult band which had a coin flip ability, which said it was immune to damage half the time. This is the same ability as Jumpluff, Skiploom, and Pheasantipity kind of, and then Machamp's is kind of similar, and Glamora's is kind of similar as well. There's also, I believe, a uh, Kecleon with the same ability, which isn't banned. I don't know. I don't exactly know why these cards are banned. Like they're kind of annoying, and I don't mind them being banned. I definitely don't really like playing with them. But there are other cards that are kind of like this, in my opinion, like the Togekiss, with the coin flip ability, which is theoretically really meaningful. I've seen a lot of Togepi. I haven't actually seen the Togekiss, any Togekiss, but anyways. And then there's also, as I said, the Kecleon. There's lots of like weird cards as well with coin flips, and I don't know. I don't know exactly why these cards are banned, but they are banned. And then Bramblegast is a card that's banned because it can have like absurdly high HP. It can have like a lot. So I think that's why it's banned. And then you have Luxurious Cape, which also gives a lot of extra HP. And then you have Dustor and Dusclops, which are just like super good. I think those kind of make sense, and they kind of flip things around by being able to take extra prizes in a way that's just not really fun and kind of whiteboards. I think Dustor and Dusclops are cards that people kind of want banned in standard at times. I've certainly heard talks about that, not like serious talks. I mean, okay, if anyone's like wondering, standard is not going to have any bans anytime soon, unless something like crazy happens. But yeah, like they have more freedom to ban cards in this format, and I don't mind it. Overall, I think they're definitely banning too many cards. I don't know if they tested these or just like banned a bunch of random cards that they kind of thought like could be annoying. Regardless, I'm not really complaining too much about this ban list, but it's also like, as I said earlier, I don't love bans that are unnecessary. I know you are a fan of the Machamp. It's a really funny, silly card. So I would have, honestly, the only card I would have banned on this list would have been Dusknoir. I probably wouldn't have banned any of the other ones. Luxurious Cape would have been very good. The rest are probably kind of whatever. I mean, Dusclops is pretty solid as well and could be annoying at times and cause some problematic gameplay interactions. But most Pokemon in the format have more HP than it. So more HP than 50, not 90. So overall, though, I think it's kind of weird that they have this ban list. It just feels kind of random. Not that the cards on it are random. They feel a little strange, but ultimately it's kind of surprising that they are doing this. And they also haven't really said a reason for this. Obviously, presume that they're like too good, I guess, but there are like some really good cards in the format too.
Yeah, I mean, normally I would say you'd go ahead with the aceless format and then come up with a ban list after, right? You'd let it run, and then, especially if you're going to do it again in another couple of months, let it run for the week, and next time it comes around, and ban a card or two, right? That would have been more logical. I don't even
Yeah, and
know.
also I'll say,
Good.
and they didn't do that for any of the other formats. I'll point that one out.
Yeah, and in like the coin flip ones, but I'm playing on my deck the Wheezing with a coin flip. If you're knocked out, you flip a coin, and then your opponent's Pokemon's knocked out as well. So, which you think if you're gonna knock ban these other coin flippy cards, why didn't they ban that? Don't know. And I don't even know though for bans. Do you need to ban Luxurious Cape? It's good, but it gives them another prize. So I think the card might just be fair anyway. I don't know. And then even Dusk Noir, which is rough, but they are giving a prize. And you only get one copy from the deck, and yes, you can recover it, but again, it's all singleton format, so um, you're not gonna you can't run over someone with Dusknor when you only have one rare candy and like one Night Stretcher, right, and one Dusknor in the deck. So it's not the same thing. How
Yeah, I
disruptive.
think with Dustwire, it can like be used to like kind of remove all your points attackers from the board. You attack and knock one out, and then you also Dustwire and knock one out. So I think it can actually be pretty disruptive. Um, but yeah, I think the other ones are not as bad. But I do, as I said, I do think Dustwire can be really rough. But again, there's like consistency issues of not being of being singleton.
Right. So let's talk just a minute here about some of the cards you play for a format like this, for any of these singleton format cards. So, like for trainers, now you're going to play cards like Great Ball because it's a great card, as I've said in the past, right? But again, look, it's not great. You don't usually play it, but you're probably playing Great Ball and also the one that looks at the bottom seven cards too. You might play that as well, which I forgot that
Dustball.
Dusk Ball, which I forgot about that until like probably the first Singleton Showdown. I was like, oh wait, I should have that in my deck too. So in some of those, this is you could get to play your Hassle supporter and things like that, that are just generally not good enough, but they have a place in these decks or at least certain consideration. I get to play my favorite Dodrio in these decks, right? Because it's a decent attacker. It's colorless. It works with anything. Gives you a little bit of draw because it's not a ton of engine. I think the Dunsparce to me is generally the best engine, and you play the Dunsparce with the free retreat. At least that's what I do because you don't have to worry about
Oh,
Dragapult.
the Dunsparce with free retreat. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, not the Dunsparce,
No, I
but
mean, yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about with these cards.
yeah, the basics. So, but that's a pretty good engine. And if there's a few other things, but some of those cards you get more value in these formats, which is part of the fun of it too. These kind of second tier cards start to become good cards in some of these formats.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's some really cool attacking Pokemon as well. There's the deck I played, or I just made a video on, and played some is really interesting with some like hand sign stuff with the Lone Dug Trio, which attacks for free with 3 cards in hand, and Northern, which attacks free for matching hand size with your opponent, unless it doesn't work. But those cards are pretty fun. There's a lot of cool cards. Also, Drakeloak. I actually think Drakeloak's the best engine in the format. Too. I think it's the best one, but regardless, there's a bunch of like okay ones. It's not amazing. And then yeah, there's a bunch of cool cards. Monkey Door is pretty good in the format. I will say I think I found a glitch as I was playing. Well, no, I found the Northern glitch, but I found another glitch. My opponent. So I use Cipher Minix Code Breaking, which if you're not familiar, you take 2 cards from your deck that you choose, you search through, then you pop them on top, but you shuffle your deck first. So that's what that does. And then my opponent attacked with Togepi from. Obsidian Flames. I don't know. So some Togepi. Let me find. Yeah, it's Obsidian Flames, which says choose a random card from your opponent's hand. And by the way, this happened multiple games. But anyways, you choose a random card from your opponent's hand. Your opponent reveals that card and shuffles it into their deck. And so they use this, and then I don't think it shuffled my deck. I can't confirm that it didn't shuffle my deck. But like Safe Manix Code Breaking didn't like change. It was very bizarre. So it might like I don't know. I think it's glitched, but regardless, I'll point that out. But anyways, the um the format is like it's pretty fun. There's a lot of interesting cards. Lisa's Appeal, also that one's really good. Boss, or it's not really good. It's pretty good. Boss's Orders is obviously a really good card. We can only play one copy. I also play Counter Catcher, which I think is presumably good in almost any deck. But then Lisa's Appeal is a supporter that gusts basics and confuses them, which is like okay, confusion isn't amazing, but it's fine. And gusting basics is almost as good as gusting anything. I guess. I mean, it's still pretty good. Also, random thing with confusion and special conditions in general in this Pokemon TCG standard format usually aren't that big of a deal. But in this format, I kept getting attacked by Monkey Door, which is really interesting, creating some really unique scenarios. And and some really interesting games. I will also say Hops Cramorant was really good in this format, or is. It's still going on. But yeah, the format, overall, it's pretty cool. I don't think there's too much more to add on it, but I think it is cool.
Yeah, no, so far I'm liking it. If it's kind of to me, it's the replacement for the CU Cup. I like CU Cup the most. This is not a bad replacement for it. I probably would have preferred to see both of them happening here and like drop like twin battles, but that is what they did. And then the other one is we are getting half year Havoc, so getting a little more creative with the naming. I guess Aceless was creative in a sense, but there already is an Aceless format that's not this format, right? So that's
Yeah.
is what it is. So half year havoc, which will be for a week again. It only uses cards from expansions released in the last 6 months, so it's not a half year in the first 6 months of the year or something. Although maybe it's getting towards the end of the year. So, but the previous 6 months, so it will be from
Wait, what?
it's from the last 6 months. So it's going to be from Scarlet Prismatic Evolutions onward is going to be half year havoc when it comes to live. I
Yeah, which is like half of the year and the first half of this year.
Okay. So all right.
But anyways, so yeah, this set I will say, or do you have? Sorry, I kind of cut into you.
No, it's fine. So it might be slightly less than 6 months. Depends how you look at it, right? They were right because it's starting before the midpoint of the year. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So Prismatic Evolutions is the first set. Obviously, Journey Together and Dust and Rivals. People are probably generally familiar with those, and probably most of the sets. But um, Journey Together, no, not Journey Together. Prismatic Evolutions has like a lot of the good cards in Standard, like Dust Noir, Dragapult EX. Wait, is Rare Candy here? Oh, maybe you can't use Rare Candy. Maybe it will toss things up a lot. But I feel like you can play Professor's Research, and you can play just a lot of the good cards in Standard. So I feel like it's pretty interesting, like and pretty unique. But you can actually play like most of the good cards in Standard because most of them are in Prismatic Evolutions, or at least a lot of them are, which will make it, in my opinion, a little less unique. But whatever, that's like not exactly Pokemon's fault. And if they just made Journey Together and Dust and Rivals, that would be probably pretty bad. But this format might be really cool. I don't really know, but it's just kind of weird. I was also doing a video or working on a video. I was looking at some data, and like the data looked like really funky this year. It was because of prismatic evolutions like messing with it. But regardless, yeah, it's fine. I don't think there's much to break down here either.
No, and we're kind of I think we've covered all the formats now, and there's a few concluding things. And I think this ties into one of the points which
Oh wait, sorry. I was just
good.
looking at it. It says trial rules, and it doesn't
Yes,
say any rules.
I know that is rather funny. I think it's the only one like that. So it's I assume they didn't forget something, although maybe I assume not, but we'll see if that's really the case. But my point is that we can only do this for a week. It's a weird format, right? I don't know what I'm going to do for this format. I haven't thought about it yet. You may have some ideas what you want to do. But in terms of deck building, we should be able to go in the deck builder and pick any of the upcoming trainer trials because they've already listed these. And ideally, you probably should be able to pick the last ones they've done too. If they make changes to Singleton Form Showdown, for instance, let's say, it should be probably whatever the upcoming one is, but I would like to be able to work on a half year Havoc deck before it happens. Now, it's standard card pool, so yes, I can do it, but I'm not sure I'm going to get the right cards exactly when I do it, right? So I would rather be able to click a button, say half year Havoc format, and just see the cards that are legal for it so I know I'm building my deck properly.
Yeah, it's a little annoying. I don't think it's the end of the world for most of these, but for Nerdly GLC, I think that's the only one where you can't do it, like at all in any of the formats, because certain cards are banned and expanded. But ultimately, that's kind of awkward. But I think we should talk about the future of the format, or the formats. And
Yeah.
you did mention earlier that they could lock into one format. I personally would not. I don't really want to see that. I do like the rotational formats. I wouldn't hate them choosing one of these formats to keep. Not twin battles. Please don't be twin battles. But yeah, if they chose to keep one, I'd be like okay with that. But I also want them to keep this rotation.
Are you still there? You broke up. All right. I don't hear you happening, and things are getting a little funky. So I'll just kind of start.
Formats like a month in, yeah, it can get a little stale.
Okay, you dropped out on my end, by the way.
Oh, okay.
But
Yep.
now you're
You dropped out
back.
once or twice. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
So anyways, yeah, I think it can get a little stale. Um, Yeah.
Well,
So I want to see the rotation.
so the question is, there's a couple things that tie in, right? Is it going to keep rotating? Are they going to add a permanent format? And I know there's a lot of people who would like to see GLC added. I don't. And there's a question of, are there enough people, enough players for these formats, right? Like back in PTCGO, the was
I guess.
Legacy
Yeah.
was that kind of became a dead format that became a ghost town. We don't want that here, so I don't think like they could add GLC and a rotating format both. Probably, I don't think there's the player base. I don't know, so that's a question. Obviously, that they're monitoring things. That's a part of what they're going to do for maybe this whole year. Would be my guess. See what people play. If everybody's playing GLC and not other things, they will probably make that permanent. I would guess, and they'll kind of adjust what things are. So. I like the rotation thing, which you do as well. I would like to see them be 2 weeks rather than 1 week. I just think that works a little better. I wouldn't mind if ultimately it kind of became a fixed set of rotation. And the other question, which I want to hear your thoughts are, should there be ranks for it? And should you be able to do friends matches, which have implications, right? If it's a ranked one, there will be more players, which is good. I kind of would like that. I don't think there's a downside to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think. So I don't like ranked because I think it makes people a little more toxic. And you seem to find like all toxic opponents like all the time. Like my opponents seem like fine, but yours just like as soon as they like are down, they just like apparently like go like leave like their computer or something. But
Yeah, it
and
happens.
that's something that you see some. I think it's not like some people are like, oh, that's not a thing, but like I mean I have seen it happen.
It happens to me when I'm losing too. It's just very random, and sometimes they stop playing for a couple turns and then pop back in. It's just bizarre, and it kind of gets a little depressing at times. So the more formats, the more weirdness things could get potentially. I assume though with trainer trials, you're in playing trainer trials because you want to, right? Standard's the default, so you may get more people that are less interested in it in standard. So I would think you'd have less in trainer trials. I think ranked is good, just partly for matchmaking. I don't know how that works. I don't think it's a bad thing to do ranked. I don't see people slow playing much. There was a period of time where I thought people were slow playing me on a more regular basis. I don't think that's happening a lot now. Some people just play slowly, and that's fine. It is what it is. The other question is, should there be friends matches? Obviously, it'd be nice to play with your friends, especially if you like GLC. The big thing that would mean, and I don't know if it's good or bad, is that you'd have tournaments, right? Because then Limitless could run tournaments, and would that be good? That's part of a meta getting solved, right? Is there's tournaments, then you have more online data. Things start to get solved. Is it good? Is it bad? I'm not certain. I kind of would like to see friends
Yeah.
matches, but I'm a bit torn about it.
Yeah, I think it's mostly good. I think, the bad is to be much smaller. I would say that I think they should just do unlimited friends matches. I think all friends matches should just be unlimited, personally, because that allows for more different things.
Yeah,
Obviously, unlimited format, presumably with like, uh, Sun and Moon on would be the format, and then you can just kind of play whatever you want and just kind of mess around. Ultimately, friends matches are supposed to be kind of whatever you want. I feel like theoretically maybe, and they can be used for tournaments. They can be used for anything, right? They can be used for
yeah.
testing. They can be used for just playing with obviously just playing with a friend. That's kind of the idea. So I'd like to see that. Also, I do want to cover one more thing because I think we've covered most of these things so far, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
And so this is the idea for future formats. I don't have too many ideas, but the one idea that I did see, this is like a very vague idea with a lot of branches from it that actually opens up essentially infinite possibilities, but is the idea of changing rules like within the game. I don't remember what the person said. Oh no, one of the ideas was that like Pokemon always have like 300 HP or something, which doesn't like I didn't even know what that would exactly mean. Like that seems kind of weird. But anyways, changing the rules in some way, for example, making like evolutions basics or something kind of crazy like this. They could get really chaotic. Would these be good? I don't know. They might be really bad, but they'd be really funny and really interesting. And they could be really cool. And it's a lot of work. Ultimately, it's a lot of work, and
Well,
I don't think they'll be able to do it. But if they could, like this seems like something that they're legitimately trying on. It seems like the biggest thing they've tried on literally the whole time in live. So to see them do something really, really out there like that, I'd love to see that. Even if it doesn't work, just to mess with things. I mean, again, it is a they're trying things out. That's kind of what the whole thing is that they're doing here, and it's cool in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it would be a train wreck, though. We knew, when they tried to implement GLC, which they did implement, and it worked. But when they first put that in,
Mostly.
it broke the game, right? If they tried to do something different, like change the rules of the game, I think that would be a disaster, right? I gotta say, so I don't wouldn't want to see it just because I don't think it would be good for live for anybody. So it'd be fun if they could, but live is just not a good program. And between the program and the development team, I don't think they could pull it off well. I don't think there's going to be many arguments about that. A format that I think could work is they have the Silver Series, which is based upon the Scarlet and Violet. You could do things like Sun and Moon format and things like that, which some people do also at times. Or even you could do like even some of the world's formats, some which people have they're named form. That's those are named formats too as well for things. So certain like certain sets of cards from the past, I think could work too as a way to play some of those decks that people like that they can't play anymore.
Yeah, there are definitely some really cool things that they could do. And I don't know, I'm just interested in seeing what they're going to do going forwards because they've shown some interesting steps so far that I think are mostly good. But I don't think they've fully shown what their vision is. They haven't really shared it entirely either. As I said, I'm sure they're like trying things out behind the scenes. I hope they're trying out a lot of things behind the scenes. I don't know if they are. They may just be trying out very little behind the scenes and kind of just like making stuff up as they go. But this is a big development in live, in my opinion. The biggest thing that's really happened live the entire time outside of
Yeah.
like the game itself, just kind of working to the best of its ability. But regardless, I'm really excited for the future here.
Yeah, no, this has been the biggest step forward, and outside of the glitch with GLC, and they did that pretty good for them. It's going well, and pleased to have it. And I think hopefully the future is bright, and hopefully we get some more fun formats. And I think we're both looking forward to what Pokemon brings us in the future with the trainer trials.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoyed the episode. Consider liking the video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribing. And tell us down below in the comments on YouTube if you have other ideas. And of course, you can also check us out on podcasting platforms if you are there. You can also check us out on YouTube, right? But we hope you enjoyed, and we're excited to see you in the next episode.
Take care.